All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a nice day. Today is Saturday, March 15th, and I'm going to work on this painting again. And yeah, I'm excited to see how far I can get today on this painting. Let me just make sure that we are, in fact, live streaming here. It looks like we are. Got some tunes playing in the background. Yeah, I just thought I would hang out for the afternoon, work on the painting, and share some of the progress. So we've been doing a really good job of documenting this entire process for this painting. I don't really want to stop. It'd be really cool if I could get the whole thing recorded for YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going. But yeah, I'm a little bit distracted at the moment, mostly because, let me turn the music down just a little bit here. Mostly because I bought a bunch of new blue gloves, kind of like these. I like to wear these to protect my skin from some of the toxic pigments that I like to work with, the cadmiums primarily. And I just, like a month ago, almost exactly a month ago, I bought a new box of these gloves and I cannot find them. It's driving me crazy. So yeah, I'm a little bit distracted right now. But I think once I start painting, that should help me kind of get back into the flow of everything. And I've got things set up here. My phone is slightly higher than normal, so if I lean in, you might be seeing the top of my head a few times today. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started here. Let me fix my shop towels here. I just replenished my palette with some new paint. Hopefully everything is pretty fresh and I don't have to worry about hard, crusty pieces of paint in my mixtures. I hope you're having a nice day. If you're watching this as a recording, thanks for checking out part 9 in my self-portrait live stream series here. Okay, let's see. So today, I think what I'm going to do, I've got my studio set up so that I can work on my portrait today. In the last session, I started to incorporate some of the bounce light coming from the window to tint that side of the face and try to connect those areas of the painting. And I'm really happy with the way that that's starting to feel a bit more connected. Hey Vicky, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're having a nice weekend so far. But yeah, I was just kind of talking a little bit about the plan for today. We're almost at 10 sessions just on this painting alone, not including all of the sketching, live streams. So I don't really have a goal in terms of how many of these recordings I plan to have. It's a very open-ended painting, so it's one of those things where I could paint for 2 more sessions, or this could be almost the last one, or maybe it's going to be 5 more sessions. And that's pretty, similar to my process in my studio practice most of the time. I feel like I tend to prefer a very open-ended sense of direction in my process, and sometimes that's good and it's rewarding and I feel like it matches my schedule. Other times it's a problem, and I have to kind of speed things up at times or just let go of an idea that maybe I wanted to explore in a painting. So those are things when we talk about process that can be challenging, surprising, and sometimes very eye-opening for ourselves and thinking about the way that we approach our own process. I've talked with lots of artists who have a very regimented approach, and I think for those artists it maybe is easier at times to create a schedule or to balance different projects. But in my experience, I tend to fluctuate a lot with the frequency that I'm making progress on different things. So this is a unique piece of artwork for me because it's it's being made specifically for an opportunity that I'll be applying to. That kind of throws a wrench in things a little bit for me. I have this like standard that I'm hoping to hit with this painting for my application, as this submission starts to approach in a few weeks. So yesterday, just as a quick recap, I was out in my garage. Our temperature, highs over this weekend, yesterday and today, are hitting like low 60s. So I was outside in my garage working on a couple of walnut float frames and building a linen panel, a small 8-inch linen panel for a commission that I'll be working on in the next few months. And because I was building frames, I started to think about what I want to do with the frame for this painting. And I've got a few ideas. I'm not really, totally committed to one of them at this point, but I definitely want to incorporate a little bit more space on the lower section of the frame. You can't really see where I'm pointing, but just below the painting by maybe 5 or 6 inches or so, and then essentially make a float frame for the painting, but then add on a lower section. And in one of the last live streams, I don't remember what day this was, I was talking about using real wood strips and kind of like mimicking the, not lattice, but like this horizontal panel pattern with real physical wood material, just to kind of extend the illusion of the painting, but also to play with this idea of reality and hopefully add to that sense of mystery and strangeness that I think areas of the painting are already starting to hit, which I'm really happy with and excited about. But yeah, let me go ahead and put on at least one of my blue gloves that I have in my studio here. If you missed the first minute of the live stream, I just was talking about how I'm a little bit frazzled right now because I bought a new box of these gloves and I am unable to locate where that box has ended up, and it's kind of driving me crazy. And I'm pretty good about remembering where things are most of the time, and I've checked every location that I can think of, if not every location, period, in my home. I'm just gonna peek over here really quick. My studio is definitely in disarray right now, which is, that's kind of good in some ways because that means I've been busy and I've been productive down here. But on the other hand, it makes it difficult when I can't find something. So there is still the chance that that box of gloves is just like underneath a pile of something. So hopefully by the next live stream, I have resolved that mystery. So we'll find out what happens. All right, let's see here. So yeah, let's just jump right into the painting today. I think what I'd like to do is I don't think I can oil out on the portrait because it feels a little sticky. And I think if I do that, I'm gonna rub some of that pink salmon color into other parts of the painting, and I don't really want to have to combat that today. So I'm just gonna paint directly over the surface, which is a little bit of a bummer because I've gotten used to working into an oiled out surface in other parts of the painting. And to do this, actually, that's how I was able to blend in some of those really soft edges. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but that happens. So, okay, let's grab burnt umber here is kind of dried over, so there's a little bit of a skin over the paint. One thing I've been noticing is that the under the brow area of that part of the portrait is a little too light. I'm gonna see if maybe if I darken that, if that will kind of give us a better sense of volume in that part of the head, which might work, it might not work, we'll find out. I'm also trying to imagine if I did have a real like red light source, if those shadows would be a little bit more of a greenish color. When I've taught some of my workshops in the past, in my last workshop last year, one of the things I brought with me was my LED light bulb that I can change the hue with. And when we had a very warm light source, the shadows were very cool, sometimes almost appearing like the complement of whatever that color of the light source was. So if this is red, in theory, I feel like the shadows should be a little bit more of a greenish color, cool green. So I'm gonna try something with phthalo green and see if that starts to read effectively. These are the types of moments that are making this portrait take so long. It's like these hypothetical experiments where I'm just trying out an idea to see if it's going to help with the vision of the painting. And these are things that some artists are, you know, putting more time in, like a preliminary part of the process, where maybe if I would have made like a small sketch, like color study, that would have solved some of these moments. But because I didn't do that, I'm just going to try my best to appreciate the fact that this painting process is just very what's the word I'm thinking of? Well, that's a little funky looking. I don't know, it might be a little too chromatic. You know, this painting process is just a little bit more informative, you know, and surprising, which is a good thing. Okay, so I think I'm just going to try to keep the shadow muted but slightly cooler in temperature, and hope that that kind of creates an effect that makes sense.
Shopping with your parents can be embarrassing.
Why would they sell jeans with holes in them? I'm going to speak to the manager.
It just looks so cool in terms of temperature against this like warmer, dark muted color.
We can be twinsies. How was shopping? Saw you stayed on budget.
Thanks, Mom. Freedom for kids, control for parents. That's family banking from Chase.
But in terms of value, I think that's helping the brow make a little bit more sense. So I think that's something that I can still incorporate and use. So we're going to kind of run with this and see how far we can go.
And all of a sudden, just the weight starts falling off.
You know, and this is where, like, hitting a point in a painting where you've been working from observation, whether that's in a studio environment or in plein air, you know, you can always decide to take things into more of an imaginative direction and incorporate a lot more, you know, creativity in terms of responding to the painting itself and less to what you're observing. So even though I have the mirror to my right, I'm just using it as a reference for values and for shapes right now. And I'm allowing myself to kind of let go of some of the color properties and the temperature properties that I'm seeing, and continue to look at the painting and go, well, this is where it's kind of not making sense now, or this is where I'm seeing this slightly off, and so on. Oops, looks like somebody might have missed. Hey Raynola, how's it going? Thanks for checking out some of my other videos. I appreciate that. I'm glad you like the eggshell project. That kind of just organically turned into a challenge at the start of the year, because I had a, you might know this already, but I made a bunch of paintings for a solo show at the start of this year, and some of those paintings incorporated eggshells that I kind of like suspended, sort of, with mirrors and like sculpture wire in my studio. And I had so much fun making those paintings that I didn't really want to let go of that subject yet, which that's kind of new for me. I feel like typically once I have a show, I'm kind of ready to close that chapter, but I started making those larger studio eggshell paintings in the fall of last year. So, I mean, that really wasn't that much time to sit with that subject. And I think that's probably why I was like super excited to test out this idea for a challenge, which if anyone is ever feeling kind of stuck in their process, I would highly encourage designing your own challenge, whether that's working with a certain medium or maybe it's working with a certain subject, kind of like with the eggshell project that I'm doing. Even if it's not something you want to post and share on social media, it's just for your own creativity and studio practice. I think it's really worthwhile. But it's been helpful beyond just trying to, come up with a series that is related and cohesive, which for me, I think that's good. But also because it just logistically and functionally gets me into my studio a lot more often, because I might be like, well, it's been 3 or 4 days since I've made an eggshell painting. I can go down and do that. And then a couple times I've then started working on an illustration painting, or I started working on this painting. So it's been really helpful for those reasons. But thanks for mentioning that. That's really nice. And there's part of me with this portrait where I'm like, maybe I'll keep the right half of the portrait as natural as possible. Like, I'll try to keep this close to what I observe from my mirror that's to the right of my easel. Hey, Mark, how's it going? I that crossed my mind a few weeks ago. I'm like, what am I going to do in April? I've also just been thinking about egg prices a lot, and it's like kind of a crazy time to be painting eggshells. But yeah, I don't think I'll incorporate any like Easter themes visually into the project. Although I was playing around with the idea of maybe, thinking about subjects and things that could be inside of the eggshell that could be painted from imagination. So like the eggshell is painted from observation, but maybe filling the eggshell with something that is coming from my imagination. That might be something that I'll experiment with at some point in this project, but yeah, we'll see. I hope your trip went well. I did check out the live stream at Lighthouse, and I saw that you got a few awards. Congratulations, Mark. That's awesome. Looks like it was a fun week. From the clips I saw of yours and Steven's and Carlos's posts too. Looks like you guys had a good week. And then Raynola, I'm glad you're doing well. Got a couple of collections, aspects of your process for the studio, one of your favorite artists living in the past. Nice. So is that like for a presentation you're giving, or like for students or something? That's kind of what it sounds like. But I hope everyone's having a nice day. If you're also in the Midwest, I hope you're getting to experience some of this warm weather that we're having. At least in the southeast part of the state, we have pretty good weather today. Maybe we'll go a little bit darker on this eye over on this side here. But I made it to 20 eggshell paintings in that challenge so far. I feel like finally getting a decent like bulk of progress that's visible in my studio, and that's been motivating. You know, when I only have like 7 or 8 done, it's like, man, I have like 93 to go, and it's already March, you know, so there have been a couple moments where I'm like, maybe this isn't going to be doable, but I think I'll be able to still pull it off before the end of the year. Especially if I can put a few weeks in where I make like 1 eggshell painting a day, I think that'll help. Oh, wow, cool. So this is for posting on social media. Nice. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to share any of my work, that would be an honor. I would be super grateful. So feel free. Whatever I have online, feel free to use if you want. But I'm just glad that you're, you know, hanging out here, and I appreciate your support on YouTube. It's really nice to have people chiming in and hanging out with me while I'm working. All right, let's see what happens if I make that darker, because I kind of like that this is a higher key in terms of value. I feel like it creates this kind of odd sense of depth. So maybe it's better not to darken that eye on the left side of the painting there. I'm gonna see if I can just kind of wipe that out real quick. Of course, I used alizarin permanent. It's like super staining kind of color. Okay, I guess we'll just have to paint over it. I like alizarin permanent, but I forget sometimes that it's really hard to undo in an oil painting. Okay, that's not too bad. Oh, cool. Wow, you're gonna make a portrait of me? That would be awesome. I'm assuming that's what you mean, right? A portrait by me of you. Wow, that would be really cool. I'm excited to see this exhibition that I'm making this painting for. Whether or not this painting gets in, I'm really hopeful that it will, but you know, you never know. Depends on who's jurying things. Regardless of whether this is in or not, I'm excited to see the work that's going to be in the show. I know a few people who have kind of reached out and have said that they're making portraits for the show as well, and it'll be fun to see them in person. Luckily for me, I'm super close by, so it's not a big trip to go see it. But yeah, I have to go back and look at the dates and see when the show actually will open. But thanks, Rainola. That's really nice. That's really generous of you to make a painting of me. Let's see. I think what I'm going to try now is to bring up the value and the chroma along this edge of my forehead. Because when I look at my mirror, this side of my face, the whole time I've worked on the portrait, has been more illuminated and a lot brighter and higher key, both in value and in chroma, partially because of the way my head is turned away from my overhead light, but also because I have a window, a small kind of basement window that is bringing light in from the left side of my easel as well. And thankfully, you know, this kind of just lined up where the window and the sense of direction of light are pretty consistent. Man, Spotify's ads are like 3 times louder than the music. It's such a bummer. But anyway, yeah, so I think I'm going to try and raise the key of those, you know, this kind of like left side of the head. Because I think that's, I've been looking at pictures of the painting on my phone. Like after I finish a session, I'll take a picture and then I'll, maybe I'll take a break for a few days or work on it the next day. It's kind of been, very sporadic. But when I look at the image of the painting on my phone, sometimes I'm like, okay, what is the thing that I really want? Like, where are the areas that I really want to have a certain effect? And where are areas that I want to have a more ambiguous effect, where I'm not trying to really be discreet about something, or explicit about something, I should say. And with the main portrait, I think there's something where I'm like partially excited about the possibility of making it look really three-dimensional and like lifelike. I think as a painting challenge, that's something that I'm interested in. But also I think as like an interpretation for the painting, that this feels more real than this over here. I think that creates a really unique relationship visually in the painting. And I've really thought a lot about the character of the language of the painting in this part of the portrait, or the smaller portrait, looking a little bit more animated or like illustrative or cartoony, kind of flat, not quite as rounded out and dimensional. And I debated for a while, like, is that something I should change, or is that in line with my concept of the painting? And the concept for me in this painting is constantly evolving and changing, which is okay. But I'm at a point where it's like, okay, I need to start really deciding what direction things need to start to go. And the show Rainola it's a juried show in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, which is about 25 to 30 minutes north of Milwaukee, and it's an open call for artists who are living in the state of Wisconsin. And so it's kind of a statewide call, or it is a statewide call. And I think it's open to all mediums. I think they're even accepting like video artwork, which is really interesting. So I hope it's a really diverse, type of exhibition. I think that would be really fun to see. But thanks for the compliment on the portrait too. That's really encouraging. But yeah, let's see. If I bring in a little bit more of a punch, or intensity, I'm hoping that can create a little bit more dimension. Some of my favorite self-portraits that I've made over the years, I think there's kind of a mix of likeness, like I'm really trying to convey, a sort of specificity that this is close to my features and how I observe my features. But then I think the ones that are my favorites also have this like very painterly quality where, I'm interested in the relationship of the depiction to the material that the object is made out of. Like the fact that this is a painting, I think, is interesting in and of itself. And, whether that's like thinking about shapes and abstraction, or the surface quality, like I made this small 8x10" self-portrait painting that is on my website, in my portfolio. And it was a painting that I think I just wanted to make just for me. I felt like, I think I made it maybe I think after I got married, like within the next 4 or 5 months, I made the painting. And we just went through a few big life changes, my wife and I, and we had moved to a new place. I was like more distanced from what I would say is my last chapter. Prior to that, like living in Michigan, being in grad school, coming back home to Wisconsin, and then being very, optimistic about the future and new experiences and all these things, all these like new feelings. And I kind of wanted to like pause and try to capture some of those feelings, not stylistically, you know, but just, I think as like the motivation to make the painting, I think that's where my head was at the time. And it ended up being one of my favorite self-portraits because it had this very organic surface quality. Like, I made it through multiple layers of oil paint, and one of the things that I was doing in that painting that was kind of unusual for my process is I would like either smear a layer of transparent pigment and do kind of a glaze, or take like a palette knife and scrape off bits and pieces of the surface and then keep painting the portrait on top of that. And through that, like, you know, revolution or evolution of layering, I ended up with this surface that was really, I think, more of a collaboration in the process and less about dictating every small characteristic that it ended up having in the end, you know. And there's something about that that is really enticing for me as a painter. Like, I really hope that I don't forget the possibilities of letting go of some of that control, or finding opportunities to embed chance and experimentation, and, you know, letting go of some of the control. You know, what can we gain through that as painters? And this painting does not really have a moment like that at this point. You know, I think part of it is like, I'm scared. I'm scared of the deadline that I have in like 2 weeks to finish this painting and make the frame and make the like sculptural elements that I really want to try to make. So I'm like, I don't know if I really want to experiment too hard on this painting, but, you know, maybe that's okay too. Maybe it's good to slow down and be a little bit more descriptive, you know, and a little bit more explicit with what it is I'm painting. I think there's something important about that too. So, okay, you're out west. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a national show, which initially that was sort of my assumption, was that it was open to like the entire country. But it's a pretty small art museum relative to like the Milwaukee Art Museum or like the Madison Contemporary Museum. You know, just for the size that it is, I don't know if they could handle doing a large national call, probably. But I think that's also a little bit of the reason why I'm excited to see the show, is because it's like, you know, it's made by my neighbors essentially, and I think that'll be really fun to reconnect with people that I already know, and then hopefully meet a lot of new people too. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's see here. So I'm noticing this really bright shape on my cheekbone under my eye, and I'm gonna use that shape, you know, as a design element in the painting. I think it's gonna make that side of the portrait a little bit more dynamic, just to have some contrast over here. And we're going to bring a little bit under the brow. Well, since I'm working on the portrait, I might as well zoom our view in here for us. That seems to make more sense. So just give me 1 second to get things in the right place. There we go. Hopefully you can get a better sense of the shapes that I'm talking about. I've said this before in live streams, but my monitor that I have is not really a great screen for color accuracy. I kind of learned the hard way about this. I wish I would have considered that before I bought this monitor a couple of years ago. But whenever I have to edit photos of my work, I have to plug in my iPad as a second screen and then double check, you know, on the iPad if the color properties and the values and things match the artwork, and the monitor, it's typically a lot, I'm trying to remember, I think it's a lot brighter than you know, what people actually end up seeing. So I don't really know what you're seeing when people are watching these videos. But hopefully the details are noticeable. One of these years I might just, you know, sell this monitor and you know, splurge on a nicer one. It's kind of annoying because, you know, I've been using Apple's computers for a while. After I graduated for my undergrad, I bought a used campus iMac from 2009, and I bought it in 2015. So at that point, it was already 6 years old, and that was my main computer until like 2021 or at the start of 2022, I think. I bought a Mac Mini and then this Dell monitor. And the nice thing about the iMac is that their color accuracy on those monitors is like perfect. And I never had problems with things looking off on other devices, or when I had something printed, it always matched really well. And you know, the bummer thing is that I don't know how, or if this is even possible, to connect that iMac to this Mac Mini. Because I think the Mac Mini is a 2020 Mac Mini. I think it's the M1. It might be the M1 chip. I have to go back and look. But so I don't know. Like, if anyone watches this at some point in the future and knows, you know, the answer to that question, and you need more information, feel free to reach out to me and I can look up that stuff for us. But yeah, I'm just going to throw that out there just in case someone sees it and has advice. Or if you have opinions on, you know, really trustworthy monitors for artists. Because I think even if you're painting from photos, it's, you know, that can make a difference too, in like how you're observing relationships of color and light and all that stuff too. So it's not always a problem when the artwork is finished. It could be a problem when you're making the work too. You know, I think I'm just gonna blend this out because this eyebrow now is a little messed up. I should probably be a little bit more careful about changing some of the drawing in the portrait, because I feel like it's working okay from a distance. But I think there's that part of me that's like really wanting to have more of those interesting relationships up close when you look at the painting. Let's see. Oh, sweet. You guys have some stuff for the monitor. MSI is pretty decent monitors. Okay, I'll check that out. I'll write that down so I don't forget. MSI. And then Mark is saying Samsung graphics monitors for $250. Okay, cool. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Raynola. So Samsung and MSI. Sweet. And I'm assuming they can both just connect with like an HDMI cable then, probably, I bet. But I will check out both of those. Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, I think I only paid like, I don't know, maybe $250 for this Dell monitor. You know, and I've had Dell laptops before, and I've always liked Dell laptops. So it was kind of a surprise to have this like color accuracy problem on the monitor. But it's probably designed more for just like office program stuff and not really like color reproduction accuracy. All right, let's see here. This is where I might run into problems with not having an oiled out surface. I think that was something I showed in this part of the painting. Well, now you can't see it, but that middle portrait, the head, looked way lighter before I oiled out, and then a lot of those contrasts were actually very close together between a dark greenish color and the red of the hair. Like you can kind of see there's a slightly cooler dark in some of those pieces of the hair. And the thing I'm a little bit nervous about now is when I eventually oil out or even out this surface, if you know, these colors I'm putting in are going to be way darker in value than the rest of the face. So there's a little bit of a risk right now without oiling out some of the surface. But again, sometimes you just have to take those chances. Let's see, I'm gonna at least oil out areas that I know are dry. Especially like down by the beard. I think I need to work on that area today. So let's take a little bit of medium. And we're just gonna dab this around here.
Goodbye, minivan. Mama got an instant online offer to sell you to CarMax. Cause Mama's done with carpooling. Songs with no swear words. Finding old chicken nuggets. Mama's ready for a red hot convertible.
Instant online offers. CarMax.
Stay warm and save every day. All in the Pick and Save app. Buy 2, get 2 free on 12 packs of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or 7-Up with your card. And we've lowered prices.
A little bit
You
more
can save
blue.
15% or more on hundreds of items like Thomas Mini Bagels, Campbell's SpaghettiOs, and more. Shop these deals at your local Pick and Save, less than 10 miles away. Or click the screen now to download the Pick and Save app to save big today. Pick and Save, Fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hey, not to be dramatic, but you should smell this. Smells so good.
Whoa, that's quite the reaction to mixing and matching Gain scents. Let's hear another from Ashley, who mixed Gain products and when.
I'm so excited.
Yes, you are. What about you, Isaiah?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and Emily summed it up like so.
Is just chef's kiss.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Mix, match, more happy with Gain.
So this area of the portrait on the right side, you can probably see there are some really thin layers of umber, warm colors. Like it's very dark, but it's a very thin area of the painting, and I keep going back and forth between wanting to bring a little bit more opacity over there and then just leaving it how it is. And I kind of like how like thin the paint feels there, so I'm going to leave it and keep building up more of the texture and the opacity on the portrait and hope that that helps give us that illusion of dimension a bit more effectively. And I know that's a technique that a lot of Baroque painters used to use in like those big narrative paintings and religious paintings. And if you see them in person, they have that like very rough, thin, washy look in the shadows, which is weird because you think the shadows are so dark. But if you think about an object in space that is being illuminated, typically the brightest area, especially if it's being front lit, it's the area that's closest to you. So like on my portrait, the parts of the hand, or maybe like areas of this cheek or the top of the forehead and the nose, like those they should feel like they're closest to the viewer. And if I incorporate a little bit more of an impasto, thicker paint application, that little bit of like volume, I think, will add to that illusion that this is rounding out towards us in space. And the thinner the paint is, that can help create this feeling like it's wrapping away from us in the painting. And that's a tactic or a technique that I've never, I don't want to say I've never used, but I don't typically use in my paintings. I typically work very opaquely, between all four corners of the painting. And especially in the last couple of years, I think my process has become very drawing focused, shape focused, and really thinking about relationships of color that are flat and opaque. And this is a painting that's kind of challenging that process by, leading me into an approach that has more of a glazing and use of transparency and opacity type of contrast. Which has been a lot of fun, to kind of come back to that way of painting after not really working that way over the last few years. I mean, even when I was in grad school working on my thesis project, I wasn't really doing a lot of glazing. That was still pretty direct and opaque. And some of that might also be a result of, some of the paintings I made for that solo show at the start of the year. Actually, some of the eggshell paintings I felt like had a very slow and much more methodical approach than a lot of my plein air paintings, which are very, very fast in comparison because you have to be really direct in laying down your observations in a painting. So, this is good. It feels really good to get back to this way of painting for this particular project. And, in other news, I recently accepted a teaching opportunity that I've had before in the past. It's an online teaching gig for a university in Minnesota, and they reached out to me a few months ago about maybe reviving this role where I'm teaching from my studio, and I'm zooming into their classroom, their painting studio, and working with students in the painting class. And I did that for 3 semesters between 2022 in the spring through the fall of 2022 into the spring of 2023. And then they closed that position and hired an in-person professor. And I think they've, had to revert back to working with someone who's remote again. So it's taken a few weeks to kind of get the details and stuff figured out, but it looks like it's going to happen starting this fall. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because I feel like it's also good for me to, regain some of the experience in different painting approaches that I used to use, or maybe that I would want to teach and talk about in the curriculum for the class. So I think this will be a really useful demonstration. These videos even would be helpful to kind of direct students back to, and if they're interested in this type of painting, of course.
Animated graph Canva, where productivity meets creativity. Now showing on computer screen.
All right, let's try to get a little bit more opacity down here in the neck.
There's a new class of blockbuster drugs. Drugs like Ozempic.
Probably use a bigger brush for this.
Just the weight starts falling off.
Fortunes.
They just got too expensive. They're just bank
A little bit
breakers.
burnt sienna.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of skepticism.
The impact of these drugs, from business to health, is just beginning.
From the journal, $1 Trillion Shot. Tap now to listen on Spotify.
I'm going to start adding a little bit more impasto to some of these. I think some people would call them, specular highlights. I think that's the term some people use, but where we've got our brightest reflected light. I feel like Rembrandt was probably the person who perfected this technique the best. One of the first people to really perfect this idea of using the tactility of the paint as a way to catch the physical light on the painting. If that texture is really varied and organic, what's happening is as the light is hitting the painting, it's bouncing off in all these different directions because at a microscopic level, that paint is very hilly. There's a lot of peaks and valleys and different directions of planes, and you end up with this, like, not sparkling effect, but this really, buzzing visual effect on the surface of the painting, and that can really add to that illusion of volume in the painting. And whenever I've employed that technique, I'm always pretty happy with the result. I feel like it also gets back to that idea of, like, oh yeah, I'm making an object, and I want this to have like a physical sense of interest, not just this illusion of an image, but as an object, and that's where I'm thinking about the frame, like what kind of wood do I want to use on the frame? Do I want to, bring in this sculptural moment? How does that interact with the painting? How does that differ from the painting? How does that extend the narrative of the painting? And these are all questions that I don't typically have time to sit and think about. But for this project, it's like, if I have the time, why don't I incorporate some of these different techniques and approaches that I've experimented with over the years, and now I can, employ some of these techniques. While I have the time. And I think for this painting, there's certainly this dynamic of subjects that I'm very aware of, and I'm trying really hard to not overlook, and this is where you could definitely get a little too heady, I think, in painting sometimes, and try really hard to overly direct the narrative, and that might not be the best thing for a particular painting. And then other times, I think if we're not taking enough consideration for the relationships of what we're looking at in the painting, we can lose opportunities of, really interesting, both obvious and really overarching, but very subtle and small nuanced relationships in paintings that can create different ideas and conversations, visual conversations. So when I think about this painting so far, I really am trying to figure out, what is this relationship between the main portrait and this exterior space that is visible through this window, and are these two things accepting of each other? Are they at odds with each other? Are they fighting each other? And is there this turmoil that's happening that's visually represented through color choices, through value relationships, through scale and proportion? So that's where it's like figuring out what the mood is supposed to be has been, a little bit of a challenge, just because there's so many different directions that the painting can go. And that's one of my favorite things to experience when I work on a painting like this, is that, I cannot know what's going to happen, and so much can still be left up to discovery. Thanks, Raynola, for confirming. Yeah, I was like, I feel like I've heard that before. I don't typically use a lot of the terminology when we think about the anatomy of light in my own practice. I think when I'm teaching, it's like I have graphics and I have, handouts and all that kind of stuff, and that's a good reminder. But that's one of the terms where I'm like, is this the right example of this idea? Am I getting this right? All right. There's also, there are some moments that are a little less intense that I still want to feel fairly, opaque and textured. One of my favorite things about this painting has been this like cyclical approach where, you know, I started the image with the main portrait on the right side of the canvas, and then hit a point where it's like, okay, this is starting to feel almost finished, you know, and I don't even know what the rest of the painting is going to be. And now I'm kind of back on this side again, having plenty of information to kind of think about and consider. And, you know, it's been really helpful to break the process into these two parts like this. Since I don't really have like a drawing that I'm going off of. That was the idea initially. It was to hit a point in one of the preliminary sketches where it's like, this is what I want to paint, and then I could just go off of the drawing. But that didn't happen. I made like 4 different drawings, and none of them, except for this moment here, you know, really informed the composition. And so I was sort of painting and drawing at the same time for a lot of this process, which is okay. You know, I think that's a fine way to make a painting too. But, you know, thinking about the deadline, it's like, okay, I have to be kind of careful, but with my time.
T-Mobile home internet radio commercial. Why don't we do a little vocal warm-up? I love their fast speed. I love their fast speed. I love their fast speed. Try singing it. T-Mobile has price lock. They won't raise your rate on internet. Just one chord. It's an easy set.
Get T-Mobile home internet for just $35 a month with autopay and any postpaid voice line.
Canva presents your work horoscope for this week. Deadlines are in retrograde, which we all know can bring some intense energy. Our advice, fend off this forecast with Canva, like Canva whiteboards to counter creative blocks, and Canva docs for clarity and communication. If you have any sales deals coming through, results will be in your favor with Canva presentations, manifesting many wins for you. It's a great week to love your work at canva.com.
I feel like lips are such weird shapes to paint. You know, because they have to recede back in space, but then they're also bubbling over like this. And depending on where the light source is coming from, like it's a pretty big value contrast between my lower lip and my top lip. And I'm trying to get this like bottom edge of the lip before it turns and wraps under into like my beard and skin under the lip. And I can see it's slightly pink, like a dark magenta color, but it's not super chromatic, right? So those little subtle shifts are really fun to try to find, but they can also take a while. And I wish sometimes that it was just like more immediate getting to those points. You know, and then there's also very cool light overhead, so I have these like, you know, cooler temperatures in the specular highlights of the lips, and I'm trying to incorporate some of that temperature contrast, which is pretty fun to try to do. I just don't know, don't feel like it's working yet. Let's see. And then there's a little bit of a highlight over here. Thanks for hanging out with us, Vicky. I hope you have a great weekend too. And thanks for the kind words on the painting. I really appreciate it. Hope you get to enjoy some of the nice weather that we still have today. I think tomorrow it's going to cool off quite a bit, so take care. Right now I'm trying to work on putting in these slightly cooler highlights on the right side of the face. I think that's going to really help push more of that volume and also help make this feel a lot warmer by cooling off what's happening on the right side. So it's kind of like a double, benefit to doing this right now. I do have to be kind of careful about going too bright, like too early, because that can definitely take away from that really volumetric illusion. So trying to really pay attention to also some of the planes of the head, because there are areas where the edges get really, really soft between two planes. And since I'm imagining this like warm artificial light situation, I'm trying to picture like, okay, if there was a glowing red light source on this side of the head, which of these volumetric planes would be reflecting that color of temperature? And it's been a really fun challenge in making this painting recently, but again, the goal is that this is going to look fairly believable. So I have to be aware of those planes. I'm going to take a really quick break to use the bathroom and let my dog outside. So I'll be back in hopefully just a few minutes. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
Translate 44 different languages on the new HP AI PC with Intel Core Ultra processors. Tap the banner to learn more.
And we're back with Canva Presents Secret Sounds Work Edition. Caller, guess this sound.
It's a mouse click.
So close. That's actually publishing a website with Canva Docs. Next caller.
Definitely a mouse click.
Nice try. It was sorting 100 sticky notes with a Canva whiteboard. We also would have accepted resizing a Canva video into 10 different sizes.
What? No way.
Yes way. One click can go a long way. Love your work at canva.com.
There's a new class of blockbuster drugs. Drugs like Ozempic. They're changing bodies,
And all of a sudden, just the weight starts falling off.
fortunes,
They just got too expensive.
They're just bank breakers.
and industries.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of skepticism.
From the journal, $1 Trillion Shot. Tap now to listen on Spotify.
And we're back. So let's see, we're at about an hour and 45 minutes. Looks like Raynola had to sign off. It's nice of her to leave a note. Yeah, let's see how far I can get today. It's good that I took a break and I'm coming back to look at the painting from a distance. If I kind of zoom us back out here. This is the only way I know how to do this. There's probably a more efficient way to do this, but this is gonna work for now. Just manually changing the size of the video here. So you can tell that the panel is kind of at like this skewed angle here. And that's unfortunately because I need to position my phone in a particular place so that each of the cameras on my phone can get the angle that I want. And you know, I think because of that, then I have to show the painting kind of at this high skewed angle, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. I'm hoping that now from this further back vantage point, you can at least see some of the paintings, like the portraits, shifts in volume now. You know, it's probably not that easy to see some of the small little bits of texture that I've been putting into the face, but I'm going to keep this zoomed back perspective for a little while during the stream, so let's get back into it now. It's always funny when I'm working with a small brush because my paper towels start to look more like this, like an impressionist painting, as opposed to these really big kind of splotchy areas of paint. And my palette also has that kind of streaky blended look in some areas. All right, let's see here. I think probably just slightly soften the edge of the highlight on the lip. I'm going to put my jacket back on, the one that I'm wearing in the painting. That way I can work on parts of the clothing today too. Because much like in the portrait, I also want areas of the clothing to feel like it's closer to the viewer using those like opaque ridges of paint, or impasto areas of paint. So let's see if we can get back to this t-shirt, or not t-shirt, but coat flannel color that I had before.
what resorts?
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Domino's, Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
There's a new class of blockbuster drugs. Drugs like Ozempic. They're changing bodies,
And all of a sudden, just the weight starts falling off.
fortunes,
They just got too expensive.
They're just bank breakers.
and industries.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of skepticism.
The impact of these drugs, from business to health, is just beginning.
From the journal, $1 Trillion Shot. Tap now to listen on Spotify.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from McDonald's, Popeyes, Pizza Hut, Wendy's, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a hamburger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Next on Metro's Nada Yada Island podcast.
I found a connection stronger than love.
Say more. Who is it?
Metro, it gave me iPhone 13 with an advanced dual camera system for $49.99. Now all my pics are on point.
Unbelievable. Okay, Metro. Experience iPhone 13 for just $49.99 with no activation fees when you join. Only at Metro.
Plus tax for November 19th. Sign up for Metro Plus Plus. Not available currently at T-Mobile or with Metro in the past 180 days.
There's a new class of blockbuster drugs. Drugs like Ozempic. They're changing bodies,
And all of a sudden, just the weight starts falling off.
fortunes,
It just got too expensive.
They're just bank breakers.
and industries.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of skepticism.
The impact of these drugs, from business to health, is just beginning.
From the journal, $1 Trillion Shot. Tap now to listen on Spotify.
I'm gonna try to definitely get some of the warm colors on the hand and see if maybe that can help round out some of the connection between the window and the hand, because I put a little bit of that warmth on the fingers here, but kind of like on this side of the face, I think I need to add in some of those more cool, almost like neutral highlights on that side too. So we'll see how this turns out. before I forget, I'm also going to soften some of these edges by the hair. I feel like we're really close on being done with the portrait, so that's exciting. Maybe I should soften this just a little bit more. I think I'm going to stop on this part of the painting, and I'm going to work a little bit on the back, lower part of the back, on this middle figure. A while ago I was talking about wanting to try out this idea where it looks almost like there's like hair, you know, growing up the back of the body, and I'm gonna probably have to do that in a few different glazes of layers, and might as well start today. So I'm gonna just try to thin out my paint, and maybe I'll make it slightly more neutral. I'll grab a little bit of phthalo green, burnt sienna. And this will help me create really thin lines to convey that hair kind of texture. Here, I'll zoom in for us again too. And then I'll probably stop for today.
There's a new class of blockbuster drugs. Drugs like Ozempic. They're changing bodies,
And all of a sudden, just the weight starts falling off.
fortunes,
They just got too expensive.
They're just bank breakers.
and industries.
There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of skepticism.
The impact of these drugs, from business to health, is just beginning.
From the journal, $1 Trillion Shot. Tap now to listen on Spotify.
Thanks for hanging out, Mark. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great weekend. And thanks for hanging out with me today. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully I'll see you in the next live stream. Almost done. Okay, I think I'm probably gonna stop here at this point anyway. Made some good progress. I feel like I started to figure out a little bit more of some of the bigger parts of the, relationships in the painting. I feel like the portrait in the foreground is starting to feel a lot more dimensional and volumetric. Just going to bring this back down as I start to wrap up here and sign off. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to the live stream today. It was a lot of fun to chat with those of you who were interacting with me in the chat, and thanks to everybody else who just kind of popped in for a while and checked out some of my process. This is part 9. I will definitely have at least a part 10, if not, a few more after that as well. As I've been saying, this painting is going to be a submission to an open call juried show at the end of the month. So I only have a few weeks left to finish the painting, which includes the frame. I won't live stream any of the frame building process, but I'll make sure to share updates as I go along. But yeah, I feel like we're starting to really get into that last 40% of the painting now. I think it's a matter of deciding what needs to be really clear and kind of crystallized in terms of resolution, what can be softer and more suggestive. There's certain effects that I still want to try to achieve, like with the hair. It'd be cool if it had like this fuzzy, furry kind of density of texture. And that's going to take a couple passes with very thin lines. So that's something I still want to do. I might even try to put in some lines on the hair, just give that a little bit more information and resolution. And then I think this window I talked about in the last live stream is not done. I think that needs some attention. But I'm happy with what I put into the portrait today. I think these cooler highlights on the fingers is really helping it feel a little bit more to scale, which if you've seen the other live stream recordings, that's been an area that's created a lot of problems in the proportions of this body in the foreground. And then I also talked a little bit about wanting to create more texture on the wood paneling. So I'd like to also incorporate some of that at some point, maybe make it feel like, at least in the foreground, like in the bottom part of the painting, maybe like the top of those dark lines where the boards sit on top of each other, kind of like this. Maybe on the top edge, I can put a little bit of thicker textures of paint to make that feel more dimensional. I think that would be interesting, especially if I'm planning to put in physical pieces of wood within the frame. And then I still have to figure out if I want to do anything with the hand. I've been talking about flowers and plants. Maybe there's some kind of a small local plant that I can incorporate into the portrait. I've been thinking a lot over the last few days on this part of the painting, and I have a few ideas. I think the kind of leading idea for me at the moment is maybe Queen Anne's lace, which we had a lot of in our yard growing up. I think that's kind of an interesting, visual plant that I could also incorporate into the landscape. It's a very tall plant, so it doesn't really fit the scale of the foreground that I was kind of thinking about in that part of the painting. But I'm really just honestly trying to do more research on flowers and plants and think more about symbolism. So if there's time, that might become part of the painting, but there's no guarantee that that'll be a key part of the narrative here. And then this area still, I think, needs a little bit more work. I talked quite a bit about wanting to put in these very patterned kind of vertical hatching lines to create the illusion of grass, and that might be a way to kind of lead the eye back to this moment through color shifts and different gradients of values. So we'll see also with that part of the painting if that's something that's going to happen or not. But overall, I'm pretty happy with today's session. We painted for about 2 hours if you take out the breaks, and it was nice to hang out with a few familiar names in the chat again today. But if you're watching this as a recording and you have feedback or ideas especially before the painting is finished, feel free to share those with me. But in general, I'm always curious to hear what people's interpretations are of my work. And this is a painting that definitely kind of stands alone when you look at my portfolio in terms of just the work I've been making over the last few years. So I would be curious to hear what people have to say about it, or read what people have to say about it. But I think that's where I'm going to leave the recording today. Thank you again for watching, and if you want to learn more about my artwork, please visit my website, acunaarts.com. I've got all of the links to other social media stuff on my website, so it's a great one-stop kind of place to learn more about my practice. But that's it. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, depending on when you're watching this, and hopefully you'll come back to see the future recordings of this process for this painting.